Hi guys, Cade Wilcox here, host of the Primitive Podcast. Thank you for joining us for today's episode. Today we have David Alderson. He's the owner of the Alderson Automotive Group, Mercedes-Benz, Lexus, BMW, Cadillac, Audi. Just a great conversation. I really enjoyed talking about the facet of their business. It's very much family-owned, started many generations ago. And so just listening to that history and that story and the dynamics of being involved in a family-owned business was really fun. And so hope you enjoyed today's episode. As always, thank you for joining us and being a faithful follower of the podcast. Hope you enjoy this one. All right, David, thanks for joining. I really appreciate you taking the time to be with me and for being on the Primitive Podcast. So for those of you that don't know David Alderson, tell us about you.
David Alderson, okay, born in Lubbock, Texas in 1964. So I attended Texas Tech University, so I've been in Lubbock for quite a long time.
Yeah.
Actually, my granddad showed up here in 1898.
Wow.
Yeah, came from he and my grandmother Alderson came from Haskell in rural Texas.
Okay.
I go back to them because, he started Alderson Cadillac in 1949.
What was he doing prior to that? What did he do initially?
So my granddad I never knew him.
Okay.
I'm the last of my generation, and my dad was the youngest of three boys. So he passed away in 1960, and I was born in 64. But I know a lot about him. So my grandfather, one of those great stories, came from Tennessee. My dad tells me that I think they were Tennessee moonshiners. Because I asked my dad one time, I said, what do we do? He said, well, we're kind of Tennessee moonshiners. And he was one of five boys. And I guess the family from Tennessee, a lot of people were migrating to Texas at that time. This is in the late 1800s. They sent three of the boys to Fort Worth, and two of them, it was my granddad Walter and his brother Homer, to the Haskell and rural area.
Okay.
So he gets married and comes to Lubbock with like an 8th grade education, but he must have had a knack for business, and and that was probably maybe not atypical of the day. Getting a college degree and coming from the farm were probably not things people did. But anyways, he ends up working for Foxworth Galbraith, and then he gets to work for the Kirkendall family, and he works his way up to become the general manager for Kirkendall Chevrolet, and he left there in 1948 to go find his own store. So he'd called General Motors in Dallas and said, hey, I'm kind of looking for something, and the Cadillac store came available in 1949, and we can come back to all that, but he was and then he bought the Cadillac store, and then he passed in 1960. But wow. He was credited with, he was on the board at Methodist Hospital when they did their first big expansion. He's also was on the building committee for the first Methodist church cathedral.
Wow.
Yep, the Cathedral of the West. It was Dr. Hy Robinson was a pastor, and he approached my granddad. I can't remember the other gentlemen, so forgive me for not having their names. But he was the one that led that building committee to build that beautiful sanctuary.
That's amazing. So at what point was your dad involved in the family business?
So my dad graduated tech in 52.
Okay.
Went off to Biloxi, Mississippi, because the Korean War was in, and so he was in the military. Fortunately, I think it was early 53, the Korean War ended, the conflict. So he came back to Lubbock. He was an engineer. A lot of people that graduated tech were engineering students at that time. And his oldest brother, Gene, and my granddad were running the store. So he came into work, and then he decided, and it just worked out from there.
Okay, cool. How many? So tell those who don't know how many stores you have and what that Alderson looks like now.
Okay, so we have 6 dealerships that represent 5 franchises. So we'll start in order. In downtown Lubbock, we have Cadillac. We added BMW in 1976. We added Lexus in 1991. Then I purchased the Mercedes stores, there was a store in Lubbock and a store in Midland, Texas that was owned by the Britt family. And that was in December of 2006 when we added Mercedes in both those places. And then we opened Audi of Lubbock on the West Loop in Lubbock in 2017.
Okay. And when did everything start expanding? Because it sounds like your granddad had one store, the Cadillac store. So kind of what season did the vision become multiple different brands, multiple different locations? Like what was really the catalyst behind that, and who really drove that success?
Well, I give my dad a lot of credit. He brought the BMW franchise in 1976. So BMW had just really come to the United States. But he had the foresight then to look for a luxury import.
Okay.
And so that was, 1976. There, you had Mercedes over here, and that was kind of it. So I give him a lot of credit for that. Personally, I've always had kind of an internal saying to myself. When I graduated tech, I went to tech thinking I was going to be in the car business. I'd been working there since 1979. And when I decided that was going to be my career, internally I just said, I'm going to leave it bigger and better than when I found it. So I really had a great opportunity. We had Cadillac and BMW at the time. But what's always motivated me was when I was done, when I completed my deal, I didn't want to just have Cadillac and BMW. Right. So I've always been driven by that.
That's cool.
Third generations, typically in family business, the first generation is the risk taker, like my granddad, because they start with nothing, but they're wanting to do something big. Mm-hmm. Second generations tend to be maintainers, just by the nature of what they've got. Third generations tend to be more risk takers and want to in a growth mode. So
that's fascinating.
Maybe I fell into that, but it wasn't by reading a book. It was just,
right.
I just wanted to make sure that, again, Mike always said, leave it bigger and better than when I found it.
Yeah, it sounds like you've had a really great experience in terms of family-owned business. A lot of times you'll kind of hear it go one of two ways. One way is it's really bad. You kind of hear horror stories. And then the other way is it works. And so what was the experience like for you when a lot of your family was still around and still actively involved and you were all kind of doing it together? What are some of the things you learned and some of the experiences you had as it relates to a family-owned business?
Oh, I think my father, he was really good. He was not I would say hands-on, so I'm probably not that way. But when he made this statement about 1990, he said, David's going to take over as a general manager, so have the day-to-day operations in February of 92. So we get to February of 92, we fast forward a couple of years, and he's like, okay, and we had a dinner, and I think all the managers forgot because he announced at that dinner, he goes, okay, here we are. It was January. We were at the Lubbock Club, and he announced that David's going to take over, and you could see the room kind of like, oh, wow, the old guy wasn't kidding. And so I took over as GM in February of 92, and my dad always wanted me to do things my way. He always told me that he didn't want to name me Junior. So I remember going into my first manager's meeting, and I asked my dad if he wanted to come, and he's like, nope.
Wow.
I don't, it's all you. He said, I'm back here, I'm watching. He knew what was going on, but he wanted me to take over. So I was blessed to be able to do how I wanted to do it, and we had some run-ins over the way I wanted to do things, whether he was still like, no, we're not going to do that yet. Yeah. Maybe after you've bought me out totally or something.
You can spend all that money if you want to.
So in a family business, that's a blessing because it's not always that way. So that's probably first that helped me a lot to kind of get going faster, and not having the managers look to my dad in the corner of the room. They were always looking to me. So you kind of, by fire, you're thrown in the fire and you got to go. Then I tell you, years ago, Lubbock National Bank started a deal called the Family Business Forum. They started that because they were seeing family businesses not be able to make it to the second or third or fourth generation, and the only option was the bank's customer, they would have to sell. They would sell the business, and it would go to another company. And so they started this Family Business Forum, and in that, they brought in people from like Wharton School of Business, Kellogg School of Business. There's a whole academia out there on family business, what to do, what not to do. And so that was very early on. That was in the 90s. So probably mid 90s. So it was timely for me because I was still very young, but to be able to learn and hear from people that had studied successful transitions over multiple generations versus unsuccessful.
Right.
So I still, to this day, those things helped me manage the family working in the business, and, and to I think the third generation, which I am, I think it's like less than 15% make it.
Wow.
So I'm beating the odds.
Gift. Yeah, beating the odds for sure.
But I do give a lot of credit to that. It was about 2 years, just hearing the speakers and being able to study what works with all sorts of different businesses.
Yeah. Did it ever stress your mom out with you and your dad working closely together and the dynamics there, or was she just kind of behind the scenes and kind of let y'all to it?
Oh, no. She's always been a big supporter. It never stressed her out. She was happy because she was ready to go and play.
Yeah.
And my dad, he was older. He would have been 52 when I took over. And he was like, he wanted me to get through tech because I was the only one in the whole family that was wanting to do the business. So if David didn't want to do this, they were going to have to find somebody to buy him out. So he was kind of hanging on, and he had run it since the late 70s. So he's like, okay, I want to go play. And so my mom was really glad for me to get there because then they started traveling.
Okay.
And, found a vacation home.
That's cool.
So she was like, you get to work.
That's great.
Me and your father are going to go do something.
Yeah. No, that's awesome. So how do you see, you have really good managers at all your locations. How do you see your role as the leader of the organization? You clearly own it. Which makes sense, but how do you see your role as a leader? Like, how do you lead your people, and what does that dynamic look like for you?
Well, I think you have to know your style. You have to know yourself. I'm always big in a 360-degree appraisal. I think you have to know how you act, how you act around other people, how you interact in business. My style. So I think you have to work within your own style. I'm not a hands-on, as I mentioned previously. So I think you have to surround yourself with people. And I've always enjoyed, in the car business, we have a lot of full of life people. I enjoy cars. Am I a motor hound? No. But I love the car business. I love the people in the car business. And so I've always enjoyed seeing our associates grow, put their kids through college. So really, for me, it's about trying to influence that within our department managers and our people of, what you can accomplish in whatever career you have in the automobile business, all the way up, throughout the entire organization.
Yeah, that's good. How do you treat failure? I mean, as you've gone through your career and as you've led your organizations, and things haven't worked or you've experienced failure, I mean, do you have a specific approach that you take to learn from failure, or what's that look like for David Alderson?
Well, I guess we're all sinners. We're all failures.
Yeah.
At some point. I think one of the things I say over and over, especially to our managers, is we're all going to make mistakes. Just learn from it and fix it. And if it's a big one, let's not do it again. Mm-hmm. The successful managers, successful leaders I've seen tend to be able to minimize the big mistakes and learn from them and move on. And I think, so when you talk about failures, that's what I've tried to do. Man, I'm not perfect, and there's certain departments in our dealership that I wish could have always been better. I'm almost 56. I've been doing this a long time. I've been running the store since 92. So, I'm better at some things than others. Some of our departments I wish would have turned the corner and really been great, but they're good. So you have to expect that, you can't be great at everything, but you just want to, learn from those failures and try not to repeat them. Yeah. And especially if I could teach that to the managers and everybody, that's good. It's frustrating when you work with someone that can't figure that out.
Yeah. You're almost into this for 40 years. I mean, you've been in the car industry longer, but I mean, in terms of really leading it, you're almost 40 years in. So, right? I mean, am I doing my math right?
That's right. My first job, I couldn't even drive cars. I could wash them. I could dry them off. That was 1979. Wow. So,
yeah. So you've been at this a long time. I'm curious how do you stay inspired? I mean, how do you how do you stay sharp? How do you stay effective as a leader? Like, what do you do kind of for that source of encouragement for your own leadership?
Oh, I think looking back, it's the goals you set for yourself. When I started, I said my goal was to leave it bigger and better than when I found it. So we checked that one off.
Yeah.
I had a goal that this year I would be able to spend more time away from the business. So I had to develop, our 3 general managers and our CFO. I set that goal about 3 years ago. So January is sometime in '97. I said, by January of 20, I want to keep my head in the business and I want to be around it, but I really am going to fully turn over day to day and feel like I trust and I have faith in them to execute and check with me if they need to. So I think you have to develop goals for yourself professionally. I think back to what I didn't want to do, and that's in our business, especially in the car business, I can name them, but it was the image of the owner being hauled out of his office on a gurney because he never could go do anything else.
Yeah.
So that was something I never wanted to do. In fact, my dad told me that. He said, "Don't do that to yourself. Make sure you develop people so that as you get to the point in your life in your 50s or 60s or whenever that is,
right,
you can go do other things."
Yeah, that's good. What's the car industry look like moving forward? I mean, every industry is, constantly changing as technology, requires industries to innovate and either change or die, really. It's kind of what it feels like. What do you anticipate the car industry looking like from your perspective?
Wow, that's a great question, especially right now going through the COVID-19 situation. I think we've been going to more of an online sales model. I don't think we're ever going to get to Apple. A car is a car. It's not a telephone. It's not Amazon. It's not a box of new underwear.
Right. Right.
I do think you're going to see less brick and mortar, and it's been interesting because probably since the early 2000s, there's been a push to have these huge, big dealerships, huge showrooms that can show all the product. And now we're seeing where the showroom that's most important is your digital showroom. So, the type of salespeople that we have, our associates, are going to be different. Service and parts. We still have to maintain the vehicles, but how we approach that. So I don't think the franchise system's going away, but if you look back, gosh, you look at all the things that have changed in the franchise system over the years since it was established back in the 20s or 30s. So I think the people that run dealerships are pretty entrepreneurial. If you're going to be successful, you have to, and you have to adapt to change. So I fully figure that the next generation that comes up that's running retail will embrace those changes and do what they need to do.
Has the consumer changed a lot in terms of expectations? Like I primarily think about convenience. Like I might be extreme in this, so I take that for what it's worth. But like I think of even like service and maintenance. Like I don't want to have to like drop my car off and figure out what to do and then come back 5 or 6 hours later. Like, do you think like the consumer is changing so rapidly that even things like parts and service and things of that nature will have to change, or do you think it's pretty consistent with what it's always been?
I think it changes. Now, we don't change oil every 3,000 or 5,000 miles like we used to. Electric vehicles are going to change that. They say, and by the year 2030, we're going to have 30% of the new cars sold will be an electric vehicle. Wow. Well, if I'm a car dealer and I have all this facility dedicated to service and parts, there's not much to do on an electric vehicle. You got some brakes, but you don't have all the engine. So, you're probably not going to have as many techs, although it's a computer now.
Yeah.
I think, cars, they say something like the cars now have as much electronics on them as a rocket that goes to the moon, stuff like that. But so, we need to we do all our communication digitally now. We're going to send you a reply that says, here's what we found on your car. It's all text, it's email. loan cars. So I think there'll be a reduction probably because of electric vehicles. And who knows, they might, if they could build an engine where you didn't have to change the oil for every 20,000 miles, they would do it, because that would be a competitive advantage to that brand.
Right.
So if you can do that, that's great. Then
so they're going to keep pushing the envelope. Yeah, they're going to keep. I'm curious. This is a totally random question, but is there an opinion of Elon Musk and Tesla within the larger, auto industry? He's really, you don't ever see any other auto industry leader in the public all the time. But you see him because of SpaceX and Solar City and the Boring Company. I mean, the dude's running like $4 or $5 billion companies, and so Tesla obviously gets a lion's share of that attention. But I'm curious, like, you're in the industry, like, do like your franchises, do they talk about him? I mean, does he consume a lot of oxygen in the room with all these other brands, or is he kind of a nobody to them because they've been in the industry forever? I'm just really curious what that looks like, if anything.
I'll try to answer that as shortly as I can. When he first came on, everybody's like, but the smart people took notice of him. He has made an impact on the industry. Up until he came, none of the other brands were even thinking electric. They were thinking diesel, biodiesel, hydrogen, what's going to propel a car?
Yeah.
We got to get off of oil. And so they were kind of toying with electric, but all of a sudden Tesla comes and provides that really electricity is going to be the new way for the most part. I mean, you're never going to be able to take a family across the country in an electric vehicle. It doesn't work, even with the best batteries 15 years from now. But around town, it's great. So now you see BMW, General Motors, Toyota, everybody's like, electricity, we got to go there. Now, I will give Lexus and Toyota credit. They came out with hybrid before that, and they still do that, and it's still a viable solution. But I think he has turned a lot of heads. The process of ordering, kind of like an iPhone. He's a technology company, really.
Right.
So I think he's made everybody take note. I've heard speakers from Audi stand up and go, let's just look at the numbers that Tesla has done in the last 2 or 3 years. It's very impressive. They're selling more cars than a lot of current brands that are out there. So now,
so he's made a huge impact.
He's made a huge impact.
Yeah.
Financially, I think there's still some questions.
Right.
To really, because without tax credits and a lot of things, that business model for Tesla doesn't work like it does for a BMW or a Toyota.
Right.
So I think those are some things that we'll see what happens.
Yeah, I guess when you're using other people's money, profitability matters a lot less.
That's the head scratcher.
I need one of those kind of companies where profitability doesn't matter.
We lost this much money, yet our stock price went up.
So,
I'm like, okay.
It makes no sense. Yeah. That's good. That's fascinating. A couple more questions for you. I mean, it sounds like you had a really close relationship with your dad, from a working standpoint. What are some of the things you learned from him that you feel like made a really big impact on your own leadership?
Oh, I think that what I mentioned earlier, just the fact that he had a trust in me. We had to buy him out to almost 20 years to pay off he and my mother. But once we executed that and had the note and all the payments, it was amazing how he never really. I think I would have been checking more, calling questions. If we had a bad month, it's like, he just took off. So I think the faith and the trust that he put in me helped me a lot.
That's really cool. Yeah, it's good. Well, thanks for all your time today. I love cars, and so I always admire you because I'm like, man, he can just drive whatever car he wants, and I can't. I wish I had a new car every year.
It is a perk.
No. Oh, it's awesome.
I know. You try to trade every year. We finally convinced you that that's not what you need to do.
And I appreciate your honesty in saying, I don't think it's time, Kate. I think you should wait a little longer. So
I know
thanks for being a good
very
friend.
Happy about that.
Thanks for being a good friend. So, hey, thanks for your time. It's good to have you.
Thank you, Kate.